The Love Life and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. If you know what to do, but can't figure out why you're just not doing it, this is the right podcast for you. I'm your host, advanced certified weight and life coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to think and eat like a normal eater, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. Hi. Today, we're going to talk about how to escape reactive and automatic eating. Buckle up, Buttercup. Grab your notepad and your pen. I forgot to give you homework last time, but don't worry, it's back today. And we're going to get you working on changing the habit of reactive eating and automatic eating that keeps you trapped at the weight that you are at. For many of you, beyond the initial weight loss, right? We hit a point where we stop losing weight. And what I've noticed through many thousands of hours of coaching my clients is that a lot of times this stop that we see happening in weight loss is happening because we're continuing to eat because of a reaction to how we feel toward negative emotions, or we're just not engaging with automatic eating, mindless eating, eating that's happening without your conscious awareness, right? So, we're going to talk about both of these today. Um, the first one, reactive eating, what that means is something happened, right? Or something is happening, or maybe low key happening in my life all the time. And that creates feelings and thoughts that you look to food to get a solution for, or maybe relief from. So this is eating in reaction to how we feel. Um, we know that if every time you feel overwhelmed at work, you eat, most afternoons around 3, if your work is chronically overwhelming for you, there's only so much that you can do with your weight loss, because what's happening is, chances are, when you reactive eat over overwhelm at work, you're not eating when you're hungry, and you may not be stopping at when you've had enough either. So this is a form of overeating that's going to interrupt your ability to lose weight. And for so many of you, this is why this topic is so important for you to figure out how to stop being a reactive eater. And then the other form of this is um, automatic eating. Automatic eating is acting or eating without a conscious thought or even an intention. It's like the machine is just running itself. Now, you may be getting some needs met um, when you eat automatically or you're mindlessly popping food into your mouth. I see this a lot when I say, well, let's go over what you ate. And when we do that with a fine tooth comb, a lot of times my clients will say, oh my gosh, I forgot I had popcorn after the movie, or I had this, or I had that. And, when I question them, a lot of times this comes down to a practice of like not being um, deliberate and intentional. Like when you want to lose weight for life, they're in the process of losing weight and for at least a little bit of time in maintenance. You have to be vigilant about every action that you take with food. You can't be automatic. If you want to go all the way to goal weight, especially the last 10 pounds, there is no automatic eating that you can kind of get away with and still expect to get all the way to your goal weight. I mean, I once coached an athlete to take off the final 3 pounds. And it came down to a habit of eating cookies after she trained. And it was like, okay, well, I mean, everything else was sort of cleaned up, and she was eating when she was physically hungry, and she was stopping when she had had physically enough. But this extra habit of the cookie eating, right? The automatic eating of it was causing her to be 3 more pounds than she wanted to be. And this was something that, like, if she wanted to go all the way there, she would have to find a way to work the cookies in to more of an intentional way to have them when she was more hungry and stop when she had had enough. I mean, she could have done it with other food too. And that's what she ended up doing because she didn't want to give up the cookies. But again, if we're solving the puzzle of weight loss, many of the big players that are in your way are going to be times when you are reactive eating. You're eating in reaction to how you feel, and you're eating without a thought of why you're eating. It's mindless eating. So, if you can change these behaviors, then you have a shot at breaking probably what might be a stall for you if you suspect this is going on. Um, Marissa Peer is a hypnotist. I think hypnosis is her. She's kind of like a hypnosis coach. And she said something really brilliant. I heard her say, you to change habits, she said, you have to make the familiar unfamiliar and the unfamiliar familiar. So let's apply this in food, your relationship to food. If you're reactive eating or automatic eating, that's what's familiar. I feel overwhelmed at work and I go into the break room and I have whatever's there, or I eat snacks or what have you. That's the familiar behavior. So what we have to do is we have to make that unfamiliar. So you're going to do a couple of things. One, you can work ahead of feeling overwhelmed. You can work on the front side of it even happening. And this is a lot of the work that I do with my clients. If we can decrease the amount of overwhelm that you feel, then the question of like eating because of it automatically becomes way less and easier to handle and less frequent in your life. So that's one place that you can work. So the same with automatic eating. Let's say you're eating to, like, a lot of times I hear this. I don't know, I just want to check out with food. I just want to check out. I just like I need a break. Well, I mean, what does that mean? You have to really start asking yourself, what am I getting from this behavior when I eat? Because I don't want to think and I don't want to feel, or I eat because of how I'm thinking about how I feel. So when you say, I want to check out, like, check out from what? See, that's a reaction in and of itself, but it's also automatic because you're not asking yourself the questions. It's just an automatic behavior that you aren't questioning. So if I was coaching on this person who wants to check out with food, I would say, check out from what? Let's give words to what we are reacting to. How are you feeling? What is happening in the course of your day that causes this need to build up to check out? Because this is a reactive need, right? Like without the work, you wouldn't have the need to check out. You'd be doing things that you want to do. And so what this implies is that you're thinking about your day at work in ways that don't feel good, or they're hard feeling, or maybe there's pressure there. Maybe there's all kinds of types of patterns of thinking that are oppressive or uncomfortable or exhausting. So we want to take a look at what is happening in your thoughts about what's happening before you have this automatic eating or this emotional eating happening at night. So working ahead of what you're eating over is a huge way to work on um, escaping reactive and automatic eating. You have to have awareness and inquiry into your life to figure out what's happening that I'm eating over it, whatever it is. So that's working ahead of it. Then there's the part where, um, in addition, let's say you're doing your best to understand overwhelm at work, to continue with our example. If you're emotionally eating from overwhelm, I see this a lot. Like, Heather, I'm eating at night. Like most all of my overeats, like breakfast is good, lunch is good, everything's good, but at night, like I do not want to stop when I'm like physiologically had enough food. I want to overeat. And I'm like, well, why? If you're not hungry for the food, what is it giving you? And you have to really figure this out for yourself. You have to ask the question, what is this giving me? So, this is your first question to understand habit or emotional reactive eating. Ask yourself, what am I getting from this? What is my need? So, try to identify what the need is. Um, a lot of times, what's happening is it's creating a frontline emotion that we aren't comfortable with. So, the other thing that you can do is when you're left with this emotion, I mean, even if we work really well and astutely ahead of the problem, you're still going to come into contact with overwhelm, right? Like we can reduce it by working on how we think about work and maybe doing some time management stuff and all of that, right? But there's still going to be times when you're overwhelmed. So we still want to figure out how to feel overwhelmed. Um, And I think it's very common to doubt that all that's needed is to feel an emotion. We think because it feels so uncomfortable. We're desperate to escape it. But the only reason why it feels so uncomfortable is because you haven't developed a relationship with being open to feeling whatever you're feeling. And again, this goes back to like growing up in the conditioning that we grew up in, those of us Gen X or older. We weren't given any kind of understanding about our feelings at all. We weren't encouraged to feel them. We weren't encouraged to even name them. They were inconvenient visitors that we did our best to just avoid altogether. And if you had to go through them, it was actually completely embarrassing. It was seen as weak. If you had feelings, you were never supposed to cry. I remember being told, no one wants to hear it. And it was, it's no one's fault, but it just shows the level at which the discomfort was absolutely pervasive with emotions. We now know emotions are the GPS of our life. Emotions are designed to be felt so that we can wake up to the habits of our thinking about our life and what is actually happening in our life, the facts and our thoughts about them. Think about it. If you never felt a single emotion, how would you know what was right for you? How would you know what's needed for your life? You would have no idea. This is why love shows us what to move toward, and disdain and dread shows us what to move away from. It's the GPS of our life. So now that we understand the technology, if you will, of emotions, we can actually reprogram our response to them by making, the unfamiliar, which is feelings, familiar. Okay. So let's say you get home from work, let's take the example of being overwhelmed, and you have this old habit of wanting to overeat. Well, for the love of God, don't sit down at the table when you're feeling overwhelmed. We have to stop this insanity. You have to learn to give yourself some time to take a breath, relax. I know so many of you are super busy, but don't use the setup of your current life as a reason why it can't change. Everyone has time that they have dominion and agency over. So if you feel like you walk in the door like front loaded with negative emotions that you are in the habit of eating over every single night, you have to have a ritual to come into your home space, whatever, and have a safe place to emote, to feel what you feel with calmness, space, permission, and clarity. So make it happen. Maybe it looks like this. I come home from work, I get changed, wash my hands, get changed into comfortable clothes. I grab my journal and I journal for 5 minutes about what I'm thinking and feeling. Okay, that at least will give you a chance to bring down the temperature of what you're feeling um, before you sit in front of a bowl of food, plate of food, whatever it is. Okay, so if you're not sure how to feel a feeling, you can go back to my previous podcasts. The episode name is called the F word, which stands for feelings. And in there, I have a meditation that you can do. That's another great thing you can do. You can look up any kind of meditation for emotional regulation or anything. You can do anything to kind of bring your parasympathetic nervous system down, because if you're in the middle of negative emotions, right, your body will be responding to them. Like I think most of us don't understand that even if we're in a low grade stress response to what we've been through in the day, as benign as it might feel, we're flooded with cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. These are all stress hormones that will keep your heart rate elevated. And, the machine of your body will understand food coming into it as a trigger that there is no clear and present danger for the human. And that's why eating in reaction to negative emotions works. But, it's a perversion really of how it's supposed to work. Like, if you look in the animal world and you see, say, for example, an antelope who's running from a lion, a lioness. Let's make her a lioness. Let's say the lioness is not successful, the antelope escapes. Well, the antelope, after being in that acute high stress situation, will shake. The animal's body shakes to help it get rid of all of the flood, the cascade, the dumping of those stress hormones. And then after a while, then the animal eats. But only after it's sort of allowed the stress hormones to be processed out of the body. And of course, as we know, like, animals don't thought loop on the negativity of being chased by the lioness. They're very much in the present moment. They don't have brain structures like we do. But for many of us, that's exactly what we do. We replay the day the whole way home on the commute home. We're continually thought looping on these negative thoughts that create the overwhelm or whatever emotion it is. And to the animal of your body, it feels like you're being continually chased by this threat. And this is why we often get to the table desperate for relief. And so, what you've got to do is you've got to approximate, if you will, the story of the antelope who doesn't get chased by the lioness every single day for 8 hours, right? So we have to work ahead of the reactive eating to work on either changing the job, right? If there's no way to think better about it and feel better about it, or adopt different ways of thinking that create less overwhelm for you. Okay. Then when you get home, if there is some residual overwhelm, you give time and space for it to process it. Your journaling about how you feel is like the antelope shaking, right? It's giving you a chance to look at your thinking, your automatic thinking, then think on purpose. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, let's say at work, like your coworker is being a bitch. and you have thoughts about it and it makes you angry, maybe. Okay, you write all that down and then think, well, what do I want to think about this? And maybe it's just like I avoid talking to my coworker as much as possible. And that will insulate me from feeling, the negativity of how she speaks to me. Okay, that's one way of doing it. That's making something new familiar. That's taking action in your life. And that will create a momentum moving forward to help you with reactive eating. Okay, but also while you're journaling, or you're at least thinking, maybe you're talking aloud about what happened, maybe you're identifying your emotion, let's say it's the overwhelm. You do need to name it, right? You need to describe it and locate how it feels. And even if it feels uncomfortable, just in the describing and naming of it, this is now something that you can feel, name, describe, and recognize. And in being with it in present time, you know that it can't actually hurt you. It might not feel good or ideal, but it's not hurting you. And then you can finally ask, like, what's needed? I mean, well, let me back up and say, well, after you name it and describe it and locate it, the emotion in your body, maybe it's tight in your throat, maybe it's heavy in your chest, maybe it's spinning, maybe it's dense, whatever it is. If you don't have any of these descriptors, that's fine too. But allow it to be there. I call it like opening the doors to it. Allowing means being okay with what is. The major part of reactive and automatic eating is resistance to what is. And we're eating as a solution to that resistance. Instead, I want you to allow what is. Like, let's say you do have overwhelm every single day after work. Like, allowing the truth of this to be the truth. Like, I have a job that stresses me out and overwhelms me every single day. Then, my friend, you've got more work to do. This isn't even about your eating. Your eating is the red flag that's waving in your face because other actions are needed. So we start with acceptance, like tell the truth about your life. Like maybe you can think better about this, maybe you can't. And for many of us, this will be the hardest thing of all because it will always be easier to eat over a problem that you don't know how to solve. But you have to insist. You have to insist to yourself, I have to pull this weed out of my life at the taproot. I'm not just going to take a weed whacker and just trim it off every day because it's just going to keep growing. And so many of us, there are the weight that we carry that we don't want represents the parts of our life that we're unwilling to truly look at, accept for what it is, and then get to work to change if we want to. Otherwise, we just have to make our peace with it. I'm going to give you a silly example. My beloved husband, has ADD, and they have what's called like time blindness. I don't know. My son has ADD too. So I live with two people with ADD. And the thing about it is that they forget things all the time. I've heard it described as like they have 26 tabs open in the web browser of their brains, like maybe 86 tabs open. And so it's easy to forget the details when you're attending to so much. So the garbage is a great example, bringing the garbage out to the street. Um, I had to have to like have a come to Jesus moment with myself on this and just say like, this man would do anything for me, but he literally cannot remember. So there's like I did a two-pronged approach. Instead of getting pissed and resentful and angry and why am I the only one who ever fucking remembers to take the garbage out? I had to say, are you doing as much as you can to help this be successful? And the truth was I wasn't. I was just like confirming what I thought was inevitable every single week, which was that he was going to let me down, which is just dumb. It's just a waste of time. So instead, I accept him for the time blindness. I accept, right? There's real issues there with how he processes and remembers versus me. So I put in, we both have, iPhones. We use the reminder app, and every twice a week in Florida, they pick up garbage. And the night before, it goes off as a reminder on his phone assigned to him. And then by 7:30 p.m., I get one that goes off. And if it's still not taken out by then I take it out. And I just had to decide this isn't something that's worth it to me to feel feelings toward him that I don't want to feel. This isn't worth it to me. If you said to me, what might be one of your regrets with as little time that on earth that we have with our loved ones, I would always say I would regret any kind of negativity towards somebody who I was expecting to be someone other than who they are. And one of my value systems is to accept people for who they are. Right? If I have depth perception issues. Sometimes in the car and braking, I'm very conservative. And he's like, "Why are you sometimes I'll look up when he's driving and he's not hitting the brake, but I see brakes ahead of me. And I'm like, "Oh, stop." But it's because it seems to me like we're going to reach the cars much sooner than he does. Do I want him mad at me for that? No, I want him to accept that I have serious, you know, um, issues with depth perception, and it does affect me sometimes. So that's a lighthearted example. I'm sure for many of you, these are very tough things to reconcile in your life that really are calling for your attention. And thank God they are getting your attention, because without these emotions and the consistency of them, the chronicness of them, we would just be complacent for the lives that we have, and we would never have the impetus to change them. So in the journey of weight loss, inevitably you will hit the space where your reactive eating and your automatic eating are really indicating to you either accept or change your life. And you got to get to work on it. You got to get to action on it. So we're going to work ahead of the buildup of emotions that we're reactive or automatic eating over. You're going to give yourself some time and space to actually process what you're feeling before you put yourself in front of food and set yourself up to have the old habit of overeating play out. And then the third thing that I want you to start doing is to become more aware of your physiological or your body responses to how you feel. And this is where being alive today is just so cool, because we have these wearable devices that can give us the biometrics of our bodies. And those can be huge clues as to what we're feeling, especially if we're not tuned in and we don't have a lot of good awareness of even what we're thinking or feeling. And so wearing an Aura ring, OURA, can really help with this. The new Aura rings have a whole section, if stress relief is your goal, where they give you a stress monitor throughout your day. It takes your heart rate, your respiration, like oxygen saturation, and a bunch of other things. And it can tell you when you are in a stressed state. And using these interfaces can really help you become way more aware of your emotional temperature, your nervous system engagement, and where you're at with it, and how different circumstances or things that you do, how it affects your body. because, we are a primal machine. And so much of our drive to eat or overeat is related to, what our body thinks is happening, if it's a stress type of thing or not. So another wearable device I've heard a lot about recently is the Whoop, WHOOP. It's another wearable device. I think a lot of athletes have known this for a long time. But again, I think this is in the culture right now. It's a movement. We're on the leading edge of really understanding the connection between mind, body, and what's happening in our lives, how we're thinking about it, how we're feeling about it, and then what our reactions and actions and reactions or automatic actions are. And when you put all this together, you can like solve the puzzle of weight loss for you. So, another thing that you can do to help you with your awareness to make the unfamiliar, which might be how you're feeling familiar, is to use an app called How We Feel. You can learn more about it on howwefeel.org. It's an app that works with, I believe, Apple and Android devices. And it's a nonprofit, it's free, and it will help you with your emotional awareness. It will also give you tools besides just the general guidelines I gave you about how to process emotions. Or if you want to feel differently than you feel, it will notice patterns, how you feel, and how it's connected to when you're at work versus home versus nighttime versus mornings. And this is all creating more familiarity with the emotional cadence of your days and why you move from different emotions to different emotions, especially the ones that you're overeating in reaction to. Okay. So, the main thing that we're going toward with all of this is to change the response that you are used to doing. So, again, we're talking about reactive eating, emotional reactive eating, or automatic eating, where you're just eating and not thinking intentionally about anything. You have to change your response in order to change anything. And so many of us think, well, if I could just not eat or overeat when I feel overwhelmed, then I could lose all my weight. Well, yeah, but you still have the need that's underneath the overwhelm, right? So your response to it has to change. We have to know that at some point you just have to say, it's all over. I'm no longer believing that food sliding down my throat solves any of my overwhelm. You're sort of abdicating your responsibility for your life as long as you continue to eat over how you feel, or to just say, I want to lose weight, but yet I also do this bullshit automatic eating that I don't even think about. And it's a big part of my days. I just mindlessly munch on chips, or I grab food off the kids' plates, or I just move. I remember this myself. Like, I remember feeling like my first awareness of emotional overeating was I laid down on the couch. It was a Friday night, and I said, I just want to relax. And then before I knew it, it was like my body was moving across space toward the pantry, and I grabbed Doritos. And I remember looking down at it was like a little snack bag that my kids had. And I remember thinking, how did I even get here from the couch? And then I remembered thinking, or remembering, I said, I just want to relax. And I looked at the Doritos bag and I was like, this is what my brain thinks relaxation is. And I was absolutely, mean, to be honest, I was kind of horrified. And I was kind of like, I don't even know how to relax without eating. And I was like, okay, I got work to do. I don't know how to relax. I mean, many of you are like me, like you grew up on the hamster wheel of achievement. That's how we relaxed, by achieving. The problem with it is you get tired, and actually sometimes you really do need to lay still and then be able to feel okay with it. So, there's that. That's the work. So the response has to be different. I had to, at some point, say, I no longer eat Doritos because I want to relax. That might be ritualistic. It might be a ritual that I do to give myself permission to relax, but that is not who I want to be. I want to be somebody who says, I want to relax. And then I know of sustainable things that I can think and do if I want to or not do that helps me relax without this ritual of food sliding down my throat. So this alternate response is always going to feel as uncomfortable as reactive eating and automatic eating does. I'm going to say that one more time. When you change your response and say, I no longer reactive eat and I no longer automatic eat, what you do instead, whatever that might be, is going to feel uncomfortable, as uncomfortable as some of the other things that you were doing that has the negative consequence of keeping weight on you. But that discomfort is temporary, number one. And number two, when you choose an alternative reaction that's sustainable and is aligned with the truth and acceptance of your life and you doing what you feel as though is a better response, then you're building a life that will serve the person that you want to be. You're building something. It's kind of like a few years ago, I said to myself, I'm never joining the gym again. If I'm going to move, lift, build, like lift heavy things, drag heavy things, I'm going to do it in my garden. I'm going to have something to show for it. Right. So, like, my body will be different. I'll be stronger. I'll be flexible. I'll be functionally stronger and I'll have a garden as well. And that's what I worked with. It like really works for me. So it's just a metaphor for these different actions. Instead of eating, whatever you do instead, whether that's work ahead of the problem at work to try to prevent overwhelm buildup, or taking this time to journal about how you feel and process emotions before you sit down to eat, you're building a relationship with yourself, more awareness over your emotional life, and a language in which to talk to yourself about what's needed. And when you can do that, amazing things will happen. So it's going to be uncomfortable, kind of like that scene from, remember that movie, Something's Gotta Give, with Diane Keaton? She plays the writer Erica. And Jack Nicholson is her daughter's boyfriend, and Keanu Reeves is her daughter's boyfriend. And that's this whole amazing film. Well, after Jack, Jack Nicholson's character sort of breaks her heart, there's this long montage of Erica in her beautiful Hamptons home crying. She's a playwright. She's writing a play and she's emoting. She's going through boxes and boxes and boxes of tissue. And it's kind of uncomfortable. Like, I was like, oh, come on, Erica. Like, let's wrap it up here. Like, this is but then I realized the brilliance of Nancy Myers, who wrote the screenplay, was that she was really trying to get our attention about the emotions take as long as they take. And the heroine, Erica, has the guts to fucking feel what she needs to feel as long as it takes. And in the process of that, she creates this amazing screenplay from her experience. She creates meaning from what she's processing, the truth, the acceptance of her life. And that allows her to move on. And hopefully my wish for you is to move on from overeating as a strategy to cope with your life. Okay? So I think I've got some homework in there for you, but just in case you don't have it and you want another strategy, your homework, which is going to be long term, is to 50 times, do something different than eat over how you feel or when you want to check out and just mindlessly eat. Write down and collect 50 of them. I guarantee you by the end of 50, you'll be a different person with food. So stay focused. Meet me over on Instagram. So long. Hey, if this episode resonated for you, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's HBEARDSLEY.com/subscribe and get on the list. You'll get a free gift, periodic coaching, plus advance notice of in-person events and workshops.